part of the piece that scared me so much was how many open houses did we go into? And the realtors told us we were not allowed to build a basement apartment in Whitby.
Welcome to Real Stories in Real Estate with your host, Denise Laframboise. Real people sharing real stories about their adventures in real estate.
So welcome to the Real Stories in Real Estate podcast. Today I have my favorite guest, Gabe.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
Anytime.
And we're going to talk about building a legal basement apartment in a property. Right?
Yes.
So all the properties we've had have always had basement apartments in them. Sometimes they were grandfathered. Sometimes they were not as legal. And sometimes we wanted to build a full legal one. So why did we decide in the home we're in today to build a full legal basement apartment?
So I think our thought was, Brooklyn's a pretty tight-knit community. And, we wanted to make sure we were doing everything by the book. Maybe some people aren't really keen on having, accessory dwellings in their neighborhood. So we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything properly, by the book. It was going to, at the end of the day, and as it is now, it was going to be a fully legal, accessory dwelling that was recognized by the town. So
yeah, by the fire code. Well, I think, and part of the piece that scared me so much was how many open houses did we go into? And the realtors told us we were not allowed to build a basement apartment in Whitby. Quite a few, right?
But I think what we ended up doing is we sort of looked at some of the we looked at online at some of the zoning bylaws before we sort of bought to make sure that we could do it.
Yeah, so right? We knew, and but it was just funny, that misinformation piece, right? And so how many times we were told, oh, you can't do that, or you can't do that in a certain area, but yet the town bylaws said we could.
Yes.
Which it was really crazy.
And I do remember having I knew a few planners at the town, and I had phoned them and just to confirm, said, hey, we're looking at doing this. Can we do that? And they would sort of guided me on what the rules were. Like, it had to be a detached home. It couldn't be a townhouse. You had to have parking
requirements
space,
and laundry.
And I don't think laundry was a requirement.
In their bylaw, it is. Yeah, different municipalities have different bylaws, right? So in theirs, you had to provide laundry.
So we just wanted to make sure. I think we just wanted to make sure that we had if we were gonna do it, this is what we had to do, and we knew what we had to do ahead of time.
So the reason why we were so organized is because while we qualified for the house, we really couldn't afford it cash flow wise, right? So which I do not recommend people buying things they cannot afford. But in our case, I was on mat leave. I was on my second mat leave. We fully planned on having another child, and
we did.
Maybe one of us planned on quitting out their job because they weren't super happy there.
Not me.
Yeah. No, you're in the same job you've been in since you're 15.
No, I've been with the same company for 20 years.
Yeah.
Right?
So it wasn't you.
No.
But so we knew that our cash flow was always going to be a bit tight in this property. We did buy at the top of our budget. You can also listen to another podcast where we sold a lot lower than we expected to. So we didn't really have our finances weren't that great.
They weren't. No.
And we were trying to keep the other rental property it was tight.
So the
diapers are expensive, right? You had two kids in diapers. It was a lot.
And I hate this term when people say time is of the essence.
Yeah.
Time was very much of the essence at that.
So the essence. Do you remember? So we actually used our visits back to the house to have a architect come with us and draw up plans for us. The best advice I have for anybody who wants to do this is call the municipality that you want to do it in and ask them what architect to use. They made highly recommended one particular firm at the time, and they said, when we get these plans from this particular firm, we don't have problems with them and they get to move forward quickly. And so we were like, okay, hired. I don't care what they cost, hired.
And I think that was a very, very, that was all you, I'll admit. It was pretty brilliant because, who do you see the most plans from? Right. Let's cut out. Let's make sure you're using the right we made sure we were using the right people, because again, we were sort of in a time crunch and we didn't want to incur any delays. Right?
And I had heard some horror stories from different people say that like their permit process could take forever because when you're doing an accessory dwelling unit that's legal, there's a lot of extra requirements. Like they need engineering plans to tell you that you can cut a window at the side of a house, like that there's not too many unprotected openings on one side. You need sound barriers. You need specific things in there about the fire code. So making sure that is that you're using somebody who just knows what needs to be done, like it will really help make that process go faster.
Yes.
And in our case, it was absolutely the case. I would do that the same every single time.
Yeah.
Do you remember we also used so we had done we done a partial reno ourselves, and then we'd done a full build of a basement apartment previously.
Yes.
And so this was going to be essentially the third kind of big reno we had done. And do you remember that we were like, maybe we don't want to do this, and we applied to be on a TV show?
Yeah, so we had that, and that actually was one of our other visits before we
we used up a visit to bring these
to meet with the producer to interview us to see if this is what we wanted to do, or if they wanted to do this episode of this particular television show with us
in a house we didn't own yet.
In a house we didn't own yet. But yeah, so.
And I think they did eventually tell us that they would pick us. And the silly part was, like it all sounded great, except we didn't get to control what they built, right? No. They would pick what they built with no input from us. And we didn't get to control the timeline. So we didn't know if it would happen in 2 months or 6 months or a year. And they also, we didn't, get to control the price point.
No, you essentially just handed them over a bunch of money and waited for them to do their thing.
So moving forward, we decided not to do the TV show thing. And I was the general contractor because I was on mat leave. So I was home anyways to keep an eye on this stuff.
With 2 kids.
Yeah, super great.
Yeah,
it was all right. I mean, it wasn't my first rodeo, so like there's definitely a lot easier than it was the first time.
Yeah, but I think it was, man, I think he did a very good job bringing people in and,
coordinating all the right people
and getting the inspectors around to come in and look at things and approve it.
Making best friends with the inspectors. I will say that the idea to do it legally with the town was definitely the right thing. Do you remember on the first day that we posted our permit?
Yeah. A neighbor knocked on the door and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And so I think we told her, and she said, "Oh, I have a friend of mine that's really interested in looking for a basement apartment in Brooklyn."
And it was pretty amazing, like that ended up actually being our first tenant. We rented to her before the drywall was up. She came and looked at
she came in and it was all studs, and she basically said, "I'll take it."
Yeah, and I was like, "You're entrusting us to finish this? Like, what if we don't do a good job?" But at the time, it was really difficult to find good rentals. She lived around the corner and was going to be in need of a place, needed something that suited herself and her children. So it was perfect and it worked out great. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened, just because we didn't have to worry about tenants then. We
didn't have to put it on any website or VG. It was just
done. And I would say that she looked after that apartment better than we look after our house. She was such a good tenant and so clean and it was awesome. So that was the right call in terms of doing the legal way, because look at what it ended up with. And the reality is having a legal apartment versus just not legal one, it wasn't really that much different. It was just having the inspectors come and the fire safety, having the right shutoffs in the furnace, having the right insulation and drywall to make sure that you had the right fire and soundproofing between the two units. And
I don't think we got contractors to do everything either. I remember being in the basement, stuffing rocks all in the ceiling. It was me, you, and Steve Pirro.
Yeah.
Stuffing rocks.
We did painting. I have, The kids helped do the flooring, remember? Like, we put together the kitchen. Like we did a lot of stuff ourselves too, just to keep the costs down because, not only keep the costs down, but also I was home. I wasn't working. So it was an opportunity that we could save a bit of money and also keep the project going fast.
Yeah.
I was really happy with how that went. I think we finished it in about 6 weeks.
The 6 weeks?
Yeah, it was about 6 weeks and under budget, which is pretty significant, especially when our money was so tight. And then got our tenant in right away. So it was definitely a worthwhile experience. And I mean, just like when we looked at other properties, like this property had a loft in it. So you think like, why would you even need the basement? Like it was so much space. Even now we don't use.
I was going to say, I think it was the basement was empty for a little bit before we got another tenant, and we didn't really notice.
Yeah, like we didn't need the space, right? Like we live in certain parts of our house, and the rest of it is just extra. So I mean, if that extra part can make you money, that is ideal. And I mean, that's how we've always kind of thought, right? Like I've always liked having people in our house too, like it's somebody else around just for safety or, convenience. That sometimes it's just a little bit nicer to have somebody in your house. Whereas I think a lot of people think the opposite. I would never want someone in my house. Like it's not like people want to hang out with you all the time. They want their personal space too. So overall, I thought it was a really good experience. I think we made a lot of the right moves. I think there's some things we learned in the process. I remember the code said one thing for the HVAC stuff, and then like the inspector wanted something different. And we had to go high and low all over the place to find the right pipes for exhaust because he wanted something super specific that they didn't have at Lowe's and Home Depot. And I found this like supply store and I said, I need this obscure sized exhaust. And they were like, I bet you I know who your inspector is. Right. So like, I mean, being friends with the inspectors helps, but like ultimately they have control, right? Like they may want something to a different standard, or they might know that standards are changing soon. I would also say that something we did that was really smart is upgrade to the large tankless hot water heater. Right. I mean, we have 3 daughters and they all have as much hair as I do. So there's going to be a lot of showering and laundry, and you've got 2 laundry, 2
washing machines, 2 dishwashers. And at the time they were just little kids. So this was very much a plan for the future.
But I think like that just made a lot of sense in terms of cost savings and accessibility to hot water for everyone. And space too. I would also say that like when we first went into the basement, our plan for where we wanted to put, I think we can put a bedroom here and this there. It ended up being completely different when the architect took a look at it, because they are looking at ceiling height. And if we put a closet here, then maybe we don't have to move this HVAC trunk. And that is going to save you more money in terms of location savings, because you can't have like these super low ceiling heights somewhere or over a doorway or something.
And the amount of light that can come into a certain room, right?
And
we had to make some windows bigger.
And certain windows, like on one side of the house, we couldn't do that the same as we could on the other side because of the unprotected opening stuff. So I think just like you think you know what you're doing and you think you know what makes sense, but like retaining an expert can sometimes change your mind and help you save a lot of money.
And time.
Right. So that's building a legal basement apartment. If anybody has questions about what we did or how we did it, or any recommendations for kind of professionals that we might use today, feel free to reach out. We would always be willing to share those contacts. And this is the Real Stories in Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Denise Gabriel. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
Bye.